She abandoned me years ago, then returned with a baby. You won't believe what happened. Just when I thought I'd finally buried the past, it clawed its way back to my doorstep, screeching for a second chance and leaving me reeling. After years of agonizing silence, my ex-wife showed up, unannounced, clutching a baby. And the words that tumbled from her lips, they turned my carefully reconstructed world upside down. What followed was a series of revelations, demands, and raw emotions that I never saw coming. You've probably heard the phrase, I never saw it coming. For me, it was exactly like that. I was married to her for years, and honestly, I thought we were doing well. For the most part, I believed we were on the same page. We had plans. The problem is, from the moment we got married, we started talking about it seriously. She'd go on and on about wanting 2 or 3 kids, how we'd decorate the nursery. She'd even browse baby gear and clothes online. It kept us close. It was our thing. Everything seemed perfect, and we were excited to start that chapter together. And then we got some awful news that turned everything upside down. After months of trying to conceive with no luck, we went to a doctor to figure out what was wrong. To cut a long story short, it was me. The diagnosis slammed into me like a runaway train. All those dreams we'd so lovingly built just vanished, leaving me feeling utterly worthless. The news devastated me. For a while, I was a mess, barely functioning. Therapy eventually pulled me out of the darkness, but the damage had been done. She seemed supportive initially, saying she'd be happy with just the 2 of us and that kids didn't matter. But there was something off about how she said it. She dropped the subject too quickly. One minute, she was dreaming about a family. The next, she was insisting she didn't need kids to be happy. I get that people change their minds, but her whole attitude shifted in a way that felt strange, unsettling. She stopped talking about baby names and avoided anything to do with children. Worse, it felt like she started seeing me differently. She'd make little digs, comments she never made before, about how I wasn't taking care of myself, how I should work out more or help around the house. Sure, I gained a few pounds, but it seemed like she was always looking for something to criticize. When I asked her about it, she'd say I was too sensitive, that I was imagining things. But I knew something was wrong. The woman who would sit with me for hours planning our future was now distant, almost a stranger. She wasn't mean, exactly, just cold. As time went on, I started believing her when she said everything was fine. I didn't want to seem needy or insecure, so I stopped pushing. After a few years, we'd fallen into a routine where we barely talked about anything meaningful, more like roommates than husband and wife. Whenever I brought up alternatives like adoption, she'd wave them away, saying she didn't want to think about it. I'm happy as long as we're together, she'd say, but it never rang true. It felt like she was convincing herself more than me. Then, out of nowhere, she announced she wanted to go on a girls' trip. She'd done a few with her friends before, and I'd always encouraged it. She'd been talking about visiting America with her pals for years. I didn't think twice. I made sure she had everything she needed and drove her to the airport. I remember her last words before she left. "Thank you for being so supportive." She turned to me, and it sounded so genuine that I brushed off the odd feeling it gave me. I mean, I hadn't done anything special. That night, I stayed up to call her when she landed, just to make sure she was okay. I kept busy around the house, watching TV, checking the time, waiting for her text. Her flight was about 9 hours. It rang and rang, but no answer. I figured she was tired, so I didn't worry too much. But by morning, still nothing. Maybe she was busy, her phone was off. I called again, texted a few times, still nothing. After a few more hours of silence, I started to panic. Eventually, I called her sister to see if she'd heard anything. Nothing. By then, I was really losing it. I even called her friends who were supposed to be on the trip. One said her phone had died. But when I reached them, they weren't with her. They were back home, having coffee 2 streets away. That's when it hit me. She hadn't gone anywhere with any friends. She just disappeared. My stomach dropped. I sat there, phone in hand, numb. Why would she lie? Why wouldn't you tell me she was leaving? I tried convincing myself it was a mistake. Maybe she missed a connecting flight or had an emergency. "Thank you for being so supportive." It was all part of whatever she'd been cooking up. I didn't know what to do. It felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. This wasn't the woman I married. I didn't even recognize her. The coldness, the distance, it all started adding up. I just hadn't seen it, or maybe I hadn't wanted to. That night, I sat staring at my phone, hoping for a call, a text, anything. But nothing came. The next morning, I woke up hoping it was a bad dream, but her empty side of the bed confirmed it. She'd packed her things. For the first few days, I kept calling her phone over and over, hoping to hear her voice, maybe get an explanation. I left messages, half the time not even knowing what to say, just hoping she'd care. But all I got was silence, which somehow made it worse. It felt like I'd been a stranger to her all along, left to figure it out alone with no hint of what went wrong. Her family was as shocked as I was. They hadn't heard from her, and her mom had no idea about her plans. I ended up at their place more times than I can count, talking to her mother, trying to piece it together. They must have felt bad for me. Her mom would cook for me when I couldn't bring myself to eat, sometimes let me crash there. She'd sit with me while I rambled about all the little things that didn't add up, trying to figure out how my life had unraveled so fast. Sometimes I was too numb to talk, just sat there in silence. I swung between anger, despair, and confusion. I kept asking myself what went wrong, if I missed something, if I hadn't paid enough attention. Some days, I'd replay every argument, every conversation, trying to pinpoint what made her leave. I wondered what I could have done better, how I could have saved us. It sounds dramatic, but I barely slept or ate, and my work started slipping. People noticed but just asked if I was okay, and I'd just say I was dealing with personal stuff. Admitting out loud that my wife had walked out without a word felt humiliating. Eventually, I told a few close friends. They tried to help, dragging me out, telling me to move on, but even then, I wondered why I hadn't been enough. The worst part was the questions from everyone else, neighbors, relatives, old co-workers who knew I was married. How's married life? How's your wife? Every time, I'd force myself to say everything was fine because I couldn't bring myself to admit she was gone. But each time I lied, it felt like a fresh wound. Therapy was the only thing that helped. I'd never done it before, but after months of barely holding it together, I found someone and started going weekly. The whole shebang. I'd ramble about the sleepless nights, reliving everything over and over. The therapist helped me see it was her choice to leave, not mine, that there wasn't some magic moment I could have fixed. It was tough to swallow. For so long, I thought I was defective, that's why she left. But slowly, I started seeing it differently. I'd ignored her coldness and distance for years, convincing myself things would get better on their own. I told myself I could hold it together, save our marriage single-handedly. Over time, I pieced my life back together, bit by bit. I hadn't realized how much I'd lost myself in our marriage until she was gone. I'd always been the one trying to keep her happy, keep our home running. Now, with all this free time, I didn't know what to do with myself. I started cooking new recipes, hitting the gym, reading books I'd meant to get to. I started working out better too, as I started feeling like myself again. At first, I was just going through the motions, but focusing on it gave me a sense of control, something I could be proud of. I'd always been good at my job, but now I threw myself into it, working extra hours. It paid off with a promotion, something I wouldn't have gotten if I had stayed stuck in my misery. There were still rough days finding an old photo, a movie ticket stub, little reminders I couldn't avoid. I'd wonder why she did it, if she ever thought about me, but those moments started fading. I could let go a little faster, move on a little easier each time. I reconnected with friends I'd drifted from since getting married. We'd go out, hit the golf course, stuff I hadn't done in ages. Having people around who weren't tied to that part of my life helped me move forward without dragging me back. What a relief. Looking back, I poured too much of myself into being her husband. When she left, it felt like she took a chunk of me with her. But I was finding myself again, piece by piece. It wasn't fast or easy. By the end of that year, I could look in the mirror and see someone not defined by her leaving. I wasn't just the guy whose wife walked out. I survived. I was stronger, and I could live without her shadow over me. I was proud of that. Life was the closest I could call normal. Friends kept me busy, and I had my routine down. I didn't think about her every day anymore. Sure, random memories popped up, but they didn't hit like they used to when she was part of my present. So when someone knocked on my door on a Saturday morning, she was the last person I expected. But there she was, standing on my doorstep with a baby. It was like seeing a ghost. My brain just shut off. She looked mostly the same, maybe a little worn. She smiled at me like she thought I'd be thrilled to see her. Seeing her brought back a flood of feelings I'd worked so hard to bury. I just stood there, staring silently. "Can I come in?" She thought I'd welcome her back with open arms after everything. I stayed calm. "No," I said. "No, you can stay there and explain." I wasn't letting her into my home, bringing all that chaos back into the one place I'd made safe again. She looked a little thrown, but stayed put and started talking. I know this might be a shock, but I wanted to come back and explain everything. I wanted to shut the door and laugh, but curiosity got the better of me. I needed to know why she left, what the story was. She went on, saying she messed up by leaving, but she realized she lost the best thing in her life. Not true. After years of silence, suddenly what mattered was standing at my door. "This is our second chance." I couldn't believe it. Like we could just pick up where we left off, with this baby as a magic reset button. Inside, I was furious, but I kept my face blank. She kept going, saying she wanted us to be a family, that she made a terrible mistake but we could start over, just the three of us. Finally, I asked, "What made you leave?" I kept my voice steady, but I wasn't sure how long I could hold it together. I needed to hear it from her after torturing myself with guesses for years. She hesitated, looked at her feet like she was ashamed, then told me what she called the truth. She admitted she left because she wanted a child and found someone who could give her one since I couldn't. She said it so casually, like it was no big deal. She explained the guy she left with didn't stick around, but then she had the baby and decided she wanted me back. I took a second to process. She'd had a child with another man and now expected me to just take it in stride. You met someone else, had a baby, and now you think you can come back like nothing happened. She started crying, but I didn't feel a thing. She kept going on about how she knew we were meant to be, that I was the one she truly loved. It was hard not to laugh. She sounded so deluded, screaming desperation. Then she tried guilt, rambling about how tough it had been as a single mom, acting like she was the victim here. She said she was ready to make it work this time, but she needed my help. I just thought, who does she think I am? You have to live with the choice you made a long time ago. There's no second chance. She looked shocked, then she got mad, accusing me of being selfish, demanding I give her another shot. She even said she could have divorced me and taken half of everything back then if she wanted to. I didn't yell or argue. We're done, I said, looking her in the eye. You've got the life you wanted. I'm not responsible for this anymore. I shut the door before she could say more. A strange calm washed over me as I heard her muffled yelling through the door. Crazy scream. Not true. I wasn't letting her back. The woman I loved was gone. This was just a stranger who thought she could pick up the pieces when it was convenient. I felt lighter than I had in years. But she didn't leave quietly. She started banging on the door, shouting. The nerve of it blew me away. She had the gall to demand I listen, standing in the one place I'd rebuilt from the wreckage. I thought about ignoring it, letting her tire herself out, but curiosity won. I cracked the door just enough to hear her, not enough to let her in. She looked shocked I wasn't giving her what she wanted. She launched into a speech about forgiving me for shutting her out, how she wanted to start over, how we can fix things if we both just try. I couldn't hold back a laugh. It was too absurd. She got mad, like I should feel bad for not taking her seriously. You left, I said. You threw it all away when you had the chance. I'm not pretending nothing happened just because you want me to. She kept repeating how hard it had been for her, how she'd been lost after leaving. I didn't buy it. I told her, you lied to me and went through with it. It was a sad act drop, calling me unfair, ungracious for not giving her another shot. She even said, I could have taken everything from you back then if I wanted. I could have walked away with half your stuff. I just stared. This woman who ditched me without a word now thought she deserved a medal for not trying to take more. Should I thank you for leaving without robbing me blind? I said. She glared, a mix of anger and maybe desperation or guilt, but I didn't care. All those years of doubting myself, feeling guilty, wondering if I'd driven her away, seeing her for who she was lifted that weight. But she kept going, pacing my porch, saying I'd regret not taking her back, that I'd never find anyone like her. She tried to flip it, make me feel like I was losing out by not begging her to stay. She trashed everything we had, and now she was yelling that I forced her to leave because I hadn't been understanding enough about the kid. What does my infertility justify her running off to have a baby with someone else? The mental gymnastics were unreal. If you wanted a kid that bad, you could have told me the truth, I said bluntly. You didn't have to lie and pretend everything was fine while you planned your exit. But I didn't let her jump. You made your choice, I went on. I'm fine with mine. She tried one last time, switching back to that pitiful look, begging me to think of the boy, how I was unfair to ignore him, like I was the bad guy. I don't know that child, I said. I've got nothing to do with him. You're not mine, and neither is he. I saw it sink in. She knew I wouldn't budge. I wouldn't let her back into my life. The anger replaced by something else. I didn't care. She tried to steamroll me, expecting me to smile and thank her. She stood there a few more seconds. I didn't say another word. When she finally got it, I shut the door without looking back. This time, I didn't wait for her to knock. I walked away, knowing it was over. No going back. After all her attempts to manipulate her way back in, I was free. There'd be no second chance. She was a memory I finally left behind. As I closed that door, a strange peace settled over me. I wasn't sad, angry, or even surprised anymore. The shame and endless wondering I carried for years just melted away. I got the closure I didn't know I needed. This time, it was really done. A few days later, her mom texted me, apologizing for how her daughter handled things. I think she tried to talk sense into her, but it didn't work. Her mom was a good person. She'd helped me a lot after the disappearance, and I could tell she was upset. I didn't hold it against her, but I wasn't getting pulled back in. I just said, thanks for checking in. I wasn't about to explain myself or give her more to chew on. You know, it was over. Over the next few weeks, I heard bits and pieces through social media and mutual friends. She moved back with her parents, and things weren't going well. The guy she left me for, the baby's father, wanted nothing to do with it. He hasn't signed up for the long haul. Few people were willing to help. She burned every bridge. Her old friends, the ones who supported me when she vanished, didn't feel bad for her. They moved on and were working to get asked back into my life because they were tired of hers. You can't blame them. Her parents weren't thrilled either. I didn't have the cash to support her. I know this because her dad called me not long after her mom's text. Curiosity got me, and I almost didn't pick up. You said they were struggling financially, talking about the baby, how tough things were. But I couldn't help a small chuckle, not out loud, when he said she just needed a little boost to get back on her feet. I told him politely that she made her choices, and I wasn't in a place to help. He didn't push, and I think he got the hint. Dinner with friends, people I hadn't talked to in years, started reaching out. But I might find it in me to give her another chance. One even suggested the kid needed a father figure and that I shouldn't let bitterness stop me from helping. But I wouldn't budge. I wasn't letting anyone guilt me just because things didn't work out. She needed to own her choices. I was done. I moved on. And I wasn't getting tangled up again. For the first time in years, my life felt steady, normal. I had my friends, my job, my routines. It wasn't flashy, but the funny thing is, overlooking when I was married, reading books I put off, cooking my own meals, taking trips. It felt good to be free, to live how I wanted without needing anyone's okay. I wasn't always chasing someone else's happiness. I was taking my life back, step by step. Hey, what happened with her? Change the subject. I wasn't hiding anything. I just learned to leave her where she belonged in the past. Last I heard, she was bouncing between her parents' place and friends' couches, struggling to hold a job, saying she was asking anyone who would listen for help. But that wasn't happening. I worked too hard to rebuild my life to go back just because her plan fell apart. I wasn't a safety net for her fix-it. In the end, she was dealing with the fallout of her choices. I felt truly free for the first time since she walked out. The foreshadow is gone, and I was content. Not in some big, showy way, but steadily happy. A few months after that doorstep showdown, I took a weekend trip with some buddies, hiking in the hills near Brighton. Standing at the top, looking out over the sea, I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living, fully on my own terms. When I got home, I found an old photo of us tucked in a drawer. I tossed it in the trash without a second thought, closed the drawer and smiled, something that was mine alone, and that was more than enough. So, after hearing everything, I have to ask, do you think I handled this situation correctly? Was I wrong to shut the door on her, or did I make the right call for my own well-being and future? I'm genuinely curious to hear your perspectives and opinions on the choices I made, especially after the years of emotional turmoil and the unexpected reappearance of my ex-wife with such a life-altering surprise. I'm open to any thoughts you might have, whether you think I was too harsh, too lenient, or just right in protecting myself after everything I'd been through. So I would appreciate if you would let me know how you feel about this whole ordeal in the comments below.